Enjoy with your headphones for a better listening experience.
Please watch till the end of the video to have the most scariest part of the story.
Tell us your good/horror neighbor stories.
I lived next to Willie for years. For the first few years I never saw him, but then after the earthquakes we had no water or power for a while, and I offered him some hot water I boiled up on the barbecue. I shouldn't have been so nice. After that he popped over regularly and just talked to me. I often ignored him knocking, and he would just wait for up to 30 minutes, regularly knocking. Looking in my windows and knocking. Would hear me getting in my car and would be waiting at the end of the drive to talk to me. Some conversations lasted 2 hours. It was just him ranting. Some of his favorite topics were pre-World War II Austrian politics, immigration, everyone should stay in the countries they were born in, conspiracy theories about the Littleton volcano heating up and government and insurance response to the earthquakes. At first I was being polite. He was an older man in his 60s that looked after his elderly mother, who then passed, and he was obviously lonely. He was also, I think now, suffering some mental health issues. I ended up padlocking the gate to stop him. He jumped over once, but then got the message. Oh, and I forgot one day he came to tell me he saw my cat a lot and it was a good hunter. He didn't like her birds, but was okay when she caught mice on his property. He then offered to draw me a map of my cat's daily activities. We once lived between 2 churches. So, most of the time during the week it was super quiet, but Sunday mornings were a nightmare with ringing bells, cars, and slamming doors. This was all tolerable. The worst part was we were on the side where people would exit the church with their screaming children only to have them scream and cry outside for an hour until it was all over for another week. At the time, we were childless, so it was irritating. Now that we have kids, we actually live in a school/daycare and are largely not bothered by the noise at all, which shows how perspectives can change over time. I would take the midweek school/daycare chaos over the Sunday one anytime. Although the school car parking thing can get pretty vicious/irrational, thankfully doesn't affect us. We moved into a new place and were convinced we were in an earthquake zone and that there was regular earthquake activity. Every day around 5:30 p.m. the house and the ground would shake. Not long shakes, just enough that the windows would vibrate for a second and we could hear pounding/shaking. It took us months to realize that the neighbor at the back was a weightlifter and was doing weights in the afternoon after work and dropping his weights, and it was the cause of the shaking. Worst neighbor, bums with small kids, a dog and cat. Dog got taken by SPCA. We rescued the first kitten from the cat, unknown of others. She'd bring this one to us for meals. Cat had more kittens. I was going to rescue them all when kitten's older, and they all vanished. A partner saw bum later, and he implied he'd put them all through his wood chipper. This was not a bad neighborhood. Current neighborhood. Helped out neighbor next door a couple of times with mower repairs, donated garden produce. A large scary-looking man turns up one day, says he heard good people lived here now, and gave us a huge tray of large, fresh mussels. So you never know who you will end up next to. Lived in a cul-de-sac with HNZ next door. Was okay to start, but then it got a little bit worse as time went on. A mother, her 6-year-old son, her teenage daughter, and her kid, then the daughter's drug-dealing boyfriend. We were a flat of 4 lads, so the young boy who didn't get any attention or help would come over to kick a ball. He swore a lot and said things that he'd clearly overheard from adults. I'll fuck that ball in the head with my cock. Pretty sad state of affairs, and just wanted someone to play with. 50/50th chance he went to school. The mother was a drunkard and would come over for a yarn, or likely to try and find more alcohol and any ciggies. They had an older staff cross something that was not friendly. One Saturday afternoon, the mother came over, very drunk, crying, saying that the dog was dying and that another neighbor had poisoned him, so she went knocking and screaming on this neighbor's door, young couple with a baby, to blame them for the dog, which was a total crock. We're not sure what had happened to the dog, but it wasn't in a good spot. The druggy boyfriend had come around, and with a shovel, probably to finish off the dying dog, then dug a hole, and burnt its body. We probably should have said something, but we didn't want to start with these people next door. Finally, they moved out. A couple of years later, we hear that the drug dealer's boyfriend had been murdered by the mother and daughter. I just feel for those two kids who are now in the system with an upbringing ahead of him. There was more. Mostly, we wanted to avoid them and have more trouble than we currently do. Not my neighbor, but a few houses down for some reason, the posited kept leaving stuff at this dude's house when it was addressed for me. Old man rocks up to my house and tells me that if the post office does it again, he'll burn it. Then went on to a 10-minute speech about magnets and 5G. I just said, huh. Ash, Mom. Wow. And when he stopped to take a breath, I said, well, thanks for the mail. See you, and closed the door. His house has large piles of rubbish all around the yard and several signs saying, no Labor or Green Party politicians. I shared a wall with my landlord in the neighboring unit. He laughed at me when I complained about the creepy handyman. For years, I never left that guy alone in my house until they said I had to. So, I bought a camera for my bedroom. He was supposed to be working at the furthest opposite corner of the flat, right beside the front door. I found the handyman entering the bedroom to look at my laundry/washing basket. Landlord said, well, I've been friends with Paul for 35 years, so if you don't revoke this trespass notice, I'll terminate your tenancy. He did, and also more than tripled the rent to make sure I moved out. They knew I was out of town, so they disabled my camera by knocking out my Wi-Fi so I wouldn't know they had decided to ignore the trespass notice. We used to live in a split villa. 1-bedroom flat on each side of the house with a shared backyard. A couple living in each half. We had a free-range pet rabbit. One day we came home late and went to get our rabbit to bring inside. He had pink lipstick stains on his head. There was no one around. A mystery. We found out much later. Our neighbor came home one night, picked up and kissed our rabbit before going to bed. We also adored their sweet little dog.
Good neighbors. Wife went into labor. Things went from 0 to 100 really quick. No time to make it to hospital. Neighbor helped deliver son on bathroom floor. She's a midwife. Her husband and I watch all the new Star Wars together whilst drinking homebrew. Next house down, play D&D every week, good friends, and awesome people. Bad neighbors, lived in CH years ago. Flatmates had a party. Next day neighbor takes down wooden fence from the entire property. Replaces with 8-foot high corrugated iron fence and spray paints F***K off in foot-high letters on our side. This same guy used to own an obnoxiously loud car and would start it up and leave it sitting idle in his drive all hours of the night. Would also throw bottles and rubbish over the fence. We used to live across from an older couple who loved their garden like would spend all of their weekends in free time gardening, or so it seemed. After the earthquakes, the husband didn't go back to work. We were a 20-something couple, not particularly interested in gardens or their upkeep, and he would come over to tell us we needed to weed and mow our lawn because he didn't want dandelion seeds floating over to his lawn. Bonus, he was my old high school photography teacher who once told a student that he hoped he would get in an accident on his Vespa because he was fat. Now our neighbors, on all sides, are friendly, lend a hand if we're stuck, and are generally nice human beings. The kids next door made Christmas hampers to sell at a Christmas market last year and dropped off all the unsold goods to our kids. There's an absolute psycho down the road from me. She lets her horses out to graze on the road because she has more than she can feed, and they everywhere and damage the school grounds. One of them is a stallion. He wrecked my gate trying to get to my mare at about 2 a.m. Anyone who asks her to stop gets screamed at and gets threats of harm to their animals and children. She's just an awful person. Once had next-door neighbors whose dogs were vicious, nasty creatures that would try to attack my brother when he was mowing the lawns. They also once had family staying with them who broke into our home to rob us, ended up with just the TV remote thanks to our other neighbors coming home. Their driveway went past the room, which had no curtains at the time. Then there were the neighbors, same house, different family, where the mom went away every weekend, so her teenager would throw loud parties all weekend, just the evenings, until 1 a.m. or so. Once had to call the fire department due to a bonfire they started. Other side of us had one person get evicted and return a month later, house still empty, and threw a Molotov cocktail into the house. Next people would have regular screaming and breaking stuff fights, they kept breaking up and needed to stay broken up, felt sorry for their kid. Next people in that house had the armed defender squad show up, but one was unexpected.
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.